Great. Okay, now that we're recording, I just wanted to begin today's session by grounding all of us with a territorial land acknowledgement. Land acknowledgements might be new to some of you, so I just want to clarify a little bit about what they are. Kirsten, if you want to go to the next slide. Great. Thank you. So land acknowledgements are meant to bring an awareness to Canada's colonial history and to acknowledge Indigenous communities who are still active on this land and to work towards reconciliation between institutions, individuals, and Indigenous communities. So grounding our webinar today and our session, noting that McGill University is situated on the traditional territory of the Kanien'kehá:ka, a place which has long served as a site of meeting and exchange amongst nations. We recognize and respect the Kanien'kehá:ka as the traditional custodians of the lands and waters on which McGill University is situated. And I just want to draw your attention to the photo here. This is from the 15th annual McGill Powwow. It's an event that takes place during Indigenous Awareness Week on campus when we're all available and willing and able to be on campus. And for more information about reconciliation, about the First Peoples House at McGill, you can go to the link that we've provided here, which is mcgill.ca, the First Peoples House, FPH. And just moving along to the next slide, I want to talk a little bit before we get into the webinar about what we are, so Campus Life and Engagement. We're a proud member of Student Services, the one office that is dedicated to helping every new student transition into life at McGill University. So we organize university-wide orientation and act as a hub to connect students to information and resources and services that they are seeking. You may have attended some of our other webinars, and as well, you'll have more information coming to you about orientation week and things like that. We're, again, a hub for anyone during their first year or any year beyond that. So you can always reach out to us with any questions you have, and we will either know the answer or know who does and be able to direct you to the person who does. So with us today, we also have McGill Student Housing and Hospitality Services. So I'm going to pass it over to our presenters. First, we have Amanda Rosenberg, again, who's a service representative at Student Housing and Hospitality Services, and Kirsten Vanderlinde, who's our off-campus and commuter student support coordinator at Campus Life and Engagement.
All right, Amanda, do you want to introduce yourself first?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Amanda Rosenberg. Thanks, Sarah, for the introduction. I work for Student Housing and Hospitality Services, as previously mentioned. Some of you might have been in touch with me if you attended the webinar on June 20th with recruitment. I'm also Amanda at McGill on Facebook, so maybe you've seen me there. And if you've ever contacted housing via phone or email, you've probably been in touch with me as well. So I'm here today to talk to you about what opportunities exist for those of you who are looking to rent on campus, but also I coordinate the off-campus housing office here at McGill as well. So I'm also a wealth of knowledge about renting in Montreal. I'm also a native of Montreal, and I graduated from McGill as well in 2012.
Awesome.
Thanks, Kirsten.
Okay, great. Yeah, I'll introduce myself. My name is Kirsten Vanderlinde, obviously, it says on the screen. And I am the off-campus and commuter student support coordinator at the Campus Life and Engagement office at McGill. I'm going into my last year in the Bachelor of Arts program in psychology, and I have a minor in sociology and behavioral science. I'm not originally from Montreal. I'm an out-of-province student, so I grew up in Ontario in a small town called Millbrook, and now I live in the Plateau, and I walk about 20 minutes to McGill every day. I guess I also kind of border the Milton Park community, but yeah, not too far of a walk. All right, so I'm just going to give everyone a quick rundown of the topics that we're going to cover in today's webinar. So first, I'm going to introduce you to what my colleagues and I do at Campus Life and Engagement, as well as some of the helpful resources available to off-campus off-campus students. We'll also be sprinkling in some fun facts and helpful tips throughout. And then Amanda is going to talk about the logistics of living off campus. And finally, our presentation will conclude with a question and answer period, as Sarah had previously mentioned. But first, Amanda would like to make a quick note about the McGill Residences.
Thank you. Yes, so for those of you who maybe are unaware, despite the fact that classes are going to be online for the fall 2020 term, we and Student Housing have decided that we're going to have our buildings open and available to students. The specifics of which buildings are going to be open, we haven't exactly confirmed yet. We're really waiting on a lot of directives from both the Government of Canada, the Government of Quebec, and the General McGill University as well. But we are going to have our buildings open, so if you are interested in applying for space and housing, that is something that we can do. That's something that we're offering both for undergraduate and graduate students, so I'm not quite sure what our demographics are here today. If you're more undergrad or grad students, you're very welcome to let us know. So, if you want to just write in the chat box if you guys are grad students or undergrad students, so we can try and cater the topics maybe, or some of the anticipated questions towards you guys, we can do that too. So far mostly undergrad, so that's perfect. So if you are interested in undergraduate residences at McGill, make sure that you notify us by completing your application on Minerva no later than July 7th. And if you are interested in graduate housing and you haven't applied yet, you can still do so. Just send us an email, and Kirsten's going to have all of our contact information available at the end.
Awesome. All right, so let's talk about the Student Life and Learning Network. So Campus Life and Engagement is a member of Student Services that's dedicated to supporting you as you navigate McGill University. We work to connect you to meaningful opportunities, and generally we try to make you or help you make the most of your time here at McGill. We collaborate really heavily with a lot of other university departments and student groups, and we are here to be your go-to hub for connecting you to resources, information, and opportunities that you might be looking for. So as you can see on the screen, we have our little diagram of how the Student Life and Learning Network works, and branching off of it, we have Student Services and the Student Housing and Hospitality Services Office. And so as you can see underneath the Student Housing and Hospitality Services, there's off-campus housing, and then over on the other side underneath Student Services and Campus Life and Engagement, we have off-campus and commuter student support. So that's a general idea of how our offices connect together. And now I'm going to give the presentation over to Amanda so she can talk a little bit about the logistics of living off campus.
Thank you. Also, sorry, my fan was blowing in my direction. For those of you who are not currently in Montreal, it is hot as heck in here, and so I had my fan blowing to cool me down, but I'm good now, so hopefully everybody can hear me. So yeah, renting in Montreal. It's particularly difficult right now for those of you who are either maybe new to Montreal, you haven't lived away from home for the first time, and trying to rent in a COVID world is particularly difficult. So hopefully a lot of the information that we'll provide you today will give you the right tools that you need in order not only to find an apartment, but to know what your rights and responsibilities are as tenants, so that when you do move forward, if you choose not to live in residences or you do need to live off campus, you go in with a satchel of a little bit more prepared knowledge. So the first thing that we want to talk about is the Régie de Logement, which is the governing body which basically governs or dictates the regulations pertaining to lease law here in Quebec under the Quebec Civil Code, basically have said that COVID is not a legitimate enough reason to be able to get out of a lease. Because there's so many ways that you can protect yourself, protect your rights, and protect yourself financially. So if you are not planning on coming to Montreal and you are not required to get a lease, I wouldn't sign one. So basically what a lease document is here in the government of Quebec is an agreement between you and your potential landlord or your potential roommates. It protects you in the event that something should go wrong or in the event that somebody tries to evict you, but it also binds you to certain regulations. So we in residences, for example, we have our students sign leases. They're what's called educational leases, which protects our students to ensure that we as McGill University offer them the best possible services that we can, and that the students understand that they have responsibilities too. For example, paying rent, not burning down the building, stuff like that. But if you go and you sign any sort of lease in Montreal, despite the fact that COVID is a reality for all of us, you want to do so with the understanding that if for whatever reason you need to leave partway through, unless you find somebody else to take over the lease for you, you are still bound to the terms of the lease, i.e. paying rent or taking responsibility for anything that might happen in the apartment during your absence. So we can talk a little bit more about lease regulations if you would like to. You can always contact us at Off-Campus Housing as well. But really my point going into this is to ensure that students understand that if you're going to be signing a lease, that COVID is not, unfortunately, a legitimate reason to break it as per the Règle du Logement. We also want to talk a little bit about the different neighborhoods that students might rent in, because I think that's a question that we get asked quite often. Because you're going to be coming to Montreal for the first time, Kirsten, do you mind going to the next slide real quick? Thank you. For those of you who are maybe new to Montreal, because again, we're not sure, if a lot of you guys are locals or if you're international students. So we tried to make a presentation that really caters to all student populations that are going to be looking at this. So what we wanted to emphasize is that if you are coming to Montreal, you don't necessarily need to live super close to the campus, because Montreal is a really accessible city, and we are going to talk a little bit about the different forms of public transit and how easy it is to get around Montreal. But know that if you're looking and you're not really liking what you see in terms of prices or in terms of availability around the campus, not to be freaked out by that Montreal is a big city and it's got a huge population of students in it as well. The way that you can sort of estimate how costs are going to work are going to be based on the different neighborhoods that you're in. And one rule of thumb that we've always given is that the closer you are to any one of the 4 main university campuses, so McGill, Concordia, Université de Montréal, or Université de Québec, the higher prices or rents are going to become. So the closer you are to the McGill campus, unfortunately, rents do tend to get a little bit higher, but then they do go down. They have the potential to go down a little bit the farther out you go. And as you can see from the map there, there's something that we created here in student housing. You can see where the big red dot is right in the middle. That's the McGill campus. And so you can see that there's a lot of different options around the McGill campus as well, if you're sort of a little bit concerned. And if you ever have any questions about what you can expect in the different boroughs, on the previous page, there was a picture of what we call our Good Neighbor Guide, wherein we actually break down the different boroughs. You can kind of get an idea of what are some of the major landmarks, what you can anticipate in terms of a price line, how far it is to travel from campus using public transit. And so you've got a lot of resources at your fingertips. Another thing that we wanted to talk about was just how to go about finding apartments. So we recommend first and foremost our partners at Places for Students. The reason that we recommend them is because we understand that the apartments listings that go onto this website are vetted. So it's not, or there's less of a likelihood of there being any sort of scams or anything that's a little bit skeevy. So we always recommend first and foremost going through Places for Students. It's also directly affiliated with the campus. So a lot of partners or a lot of people that are affiliated with McGill University or in the greater McGill community are posting on here. But we also understand that it's not the only place students can look. So you can look at apartment listing websites, for example, like Craigslist, Kijiji, Louis.com, PadMapper, things like that. McGill also has a thriving Facebook community. So there's the Off-Campus Housing Facebook pages, which I'm an admin on. And there's a number of other Facebook pages affiliated with McGill too, if you're looking for apartments. So you can always go through those. We can always post the link too for the Facebook group later on. I don't know if we have it in our listings, but we can definitely share that link with you too if you ever want to take a look at it. And then, one thing that we're going to talk a little bit later about are the factors that influence rent. And so for me, there's 3 main factors. The first factor is the closeness that you are to campus, as we mentioned. The second is the utilities, so whatever's included in it. So for those of you who might not know, typically rent can have the potential of including more things. So the three main utilities that you need to look out for are heat, hot water, and electricity. In Montreal, because we're a hydroelectric city, so most of our electricity is run based on hydroelectricity. A lot of the times landlords will have the hot water included. That way they can control it a little bit, and then you would pay for the heat and electricity on your own. And that's because, you know, for example, days like today when you have to run a fan or an AC because it's hot, the landlords don't pay for it, you do. And the same thing for electricity. So it's entirely up to you to look for it. And what you can always find out is when you're looking at listings, you'll want to go into the listing so you can see what the rent includes. So if the rent seems like it's super low, it might be because it doesn't include any utilities, and then you want to factor those into your overall budget. Again, in the Good Neighbor Guide, we have samples of budgets for those of you who might be looking for that for the first time. And again, if I don't know if everybody's reading the chat, but Sarah did mention that we're going to put the slides at the end of it too. And we've also got all of the links to everything that we're going to be sharing. So at this point, you know, in your sort of idea about how to go about finding apartments, we sort of imagine that the steps are that first you figure out what it is that you want. So what's your budget? What's how far do you want to bother, you know, commuting to campus, or how much are you willing to travel? What sort of things are you looking for included in the apartment? So like, do you need things like parking? Do you need security door access? Are you going to be looking for animals to be allowed in your properties, anything like that? And then you can go and take all of those factors. A lot of the times you can put them into the search engines that you're going to be looking at, and then you'll look at the apartments that you want. Now, visiting apartments in a COVID world is a little bit more difficult. So the regulation here in the province of Quebec is that it can only be a maximum of 2 people going in to visit any apartment at any given time. But what a lot of landlords are offering to do right now are virtual tours. So either via Zoom or FaceTime or Messenger on Facebook, things like that, where they can take you on virtual tours. The only thing that I say with this is that when you're going in, go prepared with a checklist of things that you would like the landlord to show you, or if it's not the landlord, whoever's showing you the apartment. And these are things like, you know, to look behind certain doors. You know, the landlord could show you a really nice view of the apartment, but it's, you know, there's a lot of hidden little secret gems of horribleness that could be lurking behind every door, for example. Not that that'll happen, but it's possible. Pardon me. So some of the things that you might ask your landlord to look at is like, look behind the doors, open up the faucets, flush the toilet. You want to make sure all of these things work. And because you're not there to physically do them, you want to make sure somebody is doing them for you. Again, within our Good Neighbor Guide, we do have apartment checklists, which normally we would tell students to bring them with them when they're going and visiting an apartment. But in this case, at least you can have the checklist in front of you and you can go through it and ask the landlord to, you know, point out certain things if you're unable to view the apartment. So that's really the most important things right now, is that you want to go in with a prepared, you know, as much knowledge as possible going in, so that you know exactly what you're asking or exactly what you're anticipating. So the next slide is actually about what influences rent, and I forgot that it was going to be here, so I talked about this already, but as you can see, it's really just about the location. So again, how close you are to any major university. So the properties closest to the campus are going to be a little bit more expensive, and then the farther out you go, the cheaper it becomes. The utility, so again, heat, hot water, electricity. A utility can also be something like internet, Wi-Fi, television if you want it, or phones if you need it, or sometimes it could be parking or other things like that. And then the last factor is the number of people that are sharing the apartment, which I don't think that I mentioned. And that really will vary. So for example, it'll cost more to live on your own. So if you're living in a studio apartment or a 1-bedroom, it'll cost a little bit more than if you're in a multiple bedroom apartment sharing it with other people, because not only are you sharing the rent, but you're also going to be sharing the utilities. So again, the heat, hot water, electricity, all of those bills. You might even be sharing groceries or other things like that. I understand also that right now in a COVID world, it's a little bit harder to share because it's harder to go, pardon me, and meet with roommates and make sure that you're compatible So again, we have a roommate matching quiz that you can get on our Good Neighbor Guide. That way, all of the important questions, and it's not so much, like what's your favorite show, what's your favorite music, stuff like that, but really what we have found after having done this for X number of years are really the more crucial questions that you want to ask. And so those are, sleep related and noise related and guest related. Those are really the top kind of questions that you want to prepare for. So that sort of leads in perfectly to our next main theme, which is just how to be a good neighbor. And there's a couple of things that we find help you to be a good neighbor, especially in a renting during COVID sort of world. And the first one, which is the same number one rule that we have in residences, and that is just respect. And it's respect not only for your apartment, respect for your neighbors, respect for yourself, respect for your property, and doing all of those little extra things and understanding that that respect is crucial will make everything else that you need to go in and do a little bit easier. It's also a time when you have to be a little bit extra cautious about safety and protocol. So, if you're going to be living on your own for the first time and there isn't anybody who's there to check on how you're doing all the time and make sure that you're doing all the right things and calling you out on things that you're not doing properly, you really want to make sure that you prepare for all those things. So things like opening boxes outside of your door, making sure that anything that you bring into your houses right now is clean. And especially if you're going to be living with roommates, being extra cautious and extra safe can help you make sure that you remain safe and that you remain, the living environment and your roommates can remain safe too, because you are going to be, unfortunately, a little bit more indoors than normal. At least I know I am. The next one is about noise, and this one is actually more prevalent than you would think. A lot of people are working telecommunicatively right now. So like myself right now, I'm having a conversation with you. I'm very lucky that the only things that are being disturbed in my house right now are my cats, but there's a lot of these sort of things where you're going to have multiple people telecommunicating. Could be something that could be very harmful to the sort of roommate relationship. It's definitely harmful to, couples and kids and things like that. So it's another big topic about how to be a good neighbor. And that also qualifies for, because you're going to be indoors more often, and because especially in Montreal, people are starting to, interact a little bit more, things are starting to open up a little bit more, and you can actually start having people over to your home. You want to make sure that you are respectful of certain noise conditions or noise restraints that need to happen in certain boroughs. So in Montreal, there's certain boroughs where you can get ticketed if you make too much noise after a certain time of day. And then there's other boroughs where it could be any time of day. So mostly more residential areas, it could be any time of day. If your neighbors call the cops on you, they can show up and give you a ticket for being too noisy. So it's sort of a double sort of way of looking at it. You sort of have to make sure that you're respectful of your noise level for the people that are in your own home, and also respectful of the noise level of the people that could be affected outside by your noise as well. It's also important to note that in Montreal, we have pretty strict garbage and recycling laws. So when you move to Montreal and you find out where you're going to be living, you can also visit the City of Montreal website, and they'll be able to provide you with information about what days you need to bring your garbage out. And if you don't bring it out on those days, you can also be ticketed. So for example, in my house, you have to bring your garbage out on Monday nights between 8 p.m. before 8 a.m. on Tuesday morning. And if you do so any other time, you get a ticket. And then the last thing is just about cleanliness. So this sort of falls within the respect line. So the best thing that you can do right now to be a good neighbor is to keep your personal space, to keep your shared space as clean as possible. That really is the number one way to protect yourself and your roommates and your neighbors from transmitting or getting COVID. And especially if you are going to be coming to Montreal and you are going to be participating in some on-campus activities, making sure that your house remains as clean as possible if you are going to be coming and going and interacting with a lot of other people. So that's, again, it sort of falls within what you should be doing, but also sort of within respect. So the cleaner that you keep your home, the more respect you can have for the sort of situation that a lot of new incoming students from either within Montreal, within Canada, international are going to be facing. And so if everybody sort of works more cooperatively on this, I think we can have a really fun first year for you guys coming in, and we hope that that's the way that it'll work. So that's about it for me right now, talking about just the logistics about looking for housing. So I'm going to turn it over to Kirsten, who's going to get into some of the more McGill related aspects of how this can affect you guys.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, so as we kind of mentioned maybe a little bit before, but I'm just gonna bring it up again. Montreal has a really great public transit system, so I'm gonna talk about how you can get around town. So there are several ways for you as a student to get around the city, and those are the metro, which is what we call the subway in Quebec, the bus, by Bixi bike, or by the EXO train. The EXO train connects municipalities outside Montreal to the main metro lines, but we won't really be talking about the EXO train since I'm sure most of you would not choose to live that far away from McGill, and those of you who do live that far away from McGill are probably Montrealers who already know how the system works. And then obviously we also have Uber too, but that's not necessarily the most practical way to get yourself to the school. So in order to ride the public transit system in Montreal, you have to purchase a ticket or have a fancy dancy Opus card, which is the blue card that you see up on the slide. An Opus card is a rechargeable transit card that lets you purchase tickets and stores them electronically. So you can get the regular Opus card at some pharmacies like Jean Coutu, but McGill students have the opportunity to get the reduced fare Opus card, which can be ordered online through Minerva, or you can get it at the Barrie UQAM metro station. But if you go to the metro station, you have to bring your proof of enrollment at McGill to prove that you're a student to get that card. I would definitely suggest getting the Opus card if you'll be commuting a lot, because it gives you a discount on the monthly Metro Pass, so it'll be $52 instead of the regular $86.50. Cycling is also another good option for commuting. There's lots of bike paths that are around Montreal, and McGill is also situated close to some of the main ones. A lot of the major bike paths also have like bike repair shops and air pumps and tools that you can use for free along them. So if something happens, you'll be good to go. And McGill also has a cool group called the Flat Bike Collective, which hosts workshops and other events. They sell parts, gears, and used bikes for cheap, and they also have the space and tools and knowledge to help you learn how to fix your bike for free. If you are not looking to own a bike, you can use the bike sharing program in Montreal called Bixi. That's BIXI, and that runs from mid-April to mid-November. There are lots of Bixi stations all over Montreal, even on the McGill campus. The program isn't free, but there are a lot of different price options, and if you're a McGill student, you can get a 15% discount on the annual membership. There's also a Bixi app, which will give you a map of Montreal to show you where the stations are and how many bikes are at each. So they're really handy, but if you are an experienced cyclist or you're planning to make biking your main way of commuting to school, I would suggest probably getting your own bike instead. So now we're going to talk about some important groups and resources that are available to commuter students. So the Peer Programs Network, which hosts all of these lovely programs up on the screen, strives to develop and support peer support programs like Community, First Up, ACE, and the Students Helping Students program, which all promote student leadership and enhance student engagement. If you are seeking support or you want to provide support for other students, the Peer Programs Network can help you out. I'm in charge of Community, so the COM kind of blocked a little bit. There we go. So yeah, Community with one M. Our program strives to make off-campus students feel as though they have a home at McGill, even though they don't live in a McGill residence. Community is led by a group of upper year off-campus students called Connectors. The Connectors plan social events to help you connect with other off-campus students, and then we also plan and facilitate workshops to help you develop as a person, and we also work to connect you to other valuable resources available to you on campus. We also have the First Up program, which is a peer support program for first-generation students, so students who are the first generation of their family to attend post-secondary school. We have the Ambassadors for Campus and Community Engagement, which is a team of students who help lead the Emerging Leader program. So if you want to kind of develop more leadership skills, then you should check them out. And then finally, we have the Students Helping Students program, which serves a lot of different purposes, like helping students in difficult situations, to providing information and education, and also trying to inspire and motivate students to take action. So if you want to check out these programs, you can go to the website mcgill.ca/peer-programs. And then another important resource for you is going to be Facebook, believe it or not. So if there's one thing I learned from going to McGill, it's that we have a lot of Facebook groups and a really big Facebook community. If you don't already have Facebook, I would really super suggest making a Facebook account, even just for your time at McGill. You don't have to put a picture on it or anything, but you can connect your official McGill email to the Facebook account, and then you'll get access to a lot of private McGill groups. Some of the amazing groups that I find really useful or just fun to be a part of are the free and for sale group, where you can buy someone else's trash and make it your treasure. The events and parties group, where you can stay updated on where there are free events or fun parties happening on or around campus. And then the free food on campus and in Montreal group, where people post about events where free food is being offered or where events are maybe giving out leftover food. There has, however, lately been an internal Facebook issue in regards to McGill students having a little bit of trouble accessing some of the Facebook groups that are in the McGill community, but don't be discouraged if you're not able to join. There's lots of other groups that are not enclosed in the McGill Facebook community that students tried to create to get around this issue. And then some of the most important Facebook groups that I would suggest you join would be the McGill Off-Campus First Years 2020-2021 page, which is a space where you can meet and connect with other off-campus students. I would also suggest for undergraduate students to join the McGill Entering Class 2020-2021 official Facebook page. And for the graduate students, you can join the McGill Off-Campus and Commuter Student page, the McGill University Entering Class 2020-2021 grad page, and there is also a Postgraduate Students Society Facebook page and group that you can join. But in that group specifically, I know not everyone is still a McGill student. So moving right along, if you're a parent or you have children who are dependent on you, the Students Society of McGill University, or the SSMU, has a great daycare program. They offer full-time childcare to 32 children from 18 months to 5 years old, and they have a full-time nursery with 8 spots for infants aged 4 months to 18 months old. The daycare is privately subsidized, but priority is typically given to undergraduate students. So if you want to register on their waiting list, you can visit www.laplace0-5.com, or you can go to the SMU Daycare website, which is daycare.ssmu.ca. Some of you might also be wondering where you can find winter clothing. You can join the McGill Clothing Exchange Facebook group, where you'll find coats and other clothing items for cheap. And you can also find a list of stores to get cheap winter clothing on the McGill Office of Religious and Spiritual Life's website. Some additional resources that are going to be useful for you is the off-campus and commuter student support, which is programming that I run at McGill. We cater to the off-campus and commuter students of McGill, trying to pay close attention to the ones that are in their first year. So all of you listening to this webinar, we want you to succeed and have access to everything you need as a McGill student. So feel free to check out our website for other resources at mcgill.ca/OCCSS, or you can email me at occs@mcgill.ca. It's up on the screen. And then finally, there's 2 super cool orientation events that we plan specifically for you. One is called Off-Campus Connect, or OCX, and then the other one is called Grads Connect, or GX. So this year, OCX and GX will be taking place in an online format, but don't worry, because we still have lots of fun social events and webinars planned for our incoming off-campus and graduate students. Both events will give you a chance to start building your social network at McGill before the semester starts. You might find your new best friends, future collaborators, or maybe the love of your life, but don't quote me on that. If you're interested in learning the do's and don'ts of McGill from your hosts and exploring McGill's campus on the virtual Amazing Race, then we hope you'll join us for OCX or GX, depending on whether you're a graduate or undergraduate student. Both the events are also totally free, and the registration for Off-Campus Connects will be sent on the same link that's sent to you to register for Frosh. And if you're a graduate student, a registration link for Grads Connect will be sent to your McGill email, but you can also find more information about these events on the Campus Life and Engagement website. Now, I'm going to just hand things over to Amanda quickly so that she can talk about renting and where you can find legal advice.
Thank you, Kirsten. So one thing that we just have to sort of make clear is that as much as we are sort of experts about renting in Montreal, and we know a lot about the logistics of it and where to, send you for, for all of the steps about finding an apartment and living and cohabitating equitably and safely and all of that. Unfortunately, we're not lawyers, and so we can't provide you with a lot of legal advice, but there's also a lot of legal resources affiliated with McGill that we would really like to share with you. So the first one is the Legal Information Clinic at McGill, or LICM. We've been very lucky to partner with them in a lot of different ways over the past few years, and we highly recommend them as a resource. So you can find their information through the SSMU website, through the general McGill website, and you can check them out on Facebook as well. So they're a good starting resource. They're made up of current and former law students here at McGill. The next one is the Régie de Logement, which I mentioned earlier, which is the governing body of renting here in Montreal and essentially the enforcers of the Civil Code of Quebec. They're a phenomenal resource if you require advocacy to protect your rights, especially if it pertains to anything lease related. They're a phenomenal resource. You can contact them also either through rdlm.qc.ca, or all of these resources are available through our off-campus website. So you can just Google McGill off-campus housing and you'll be able to find it. The next one is the Good Neighbor Guide, which I previously mentioned. It's available as a downloadable PDF that you can access on your phones, tablets, whatever is easiest for you. There's a lot of printable resources in there if you want to take them with you when you go to visit apartments. There's also just a lot of information there about setting up your apartment for the first time. So checklists so that you don't really have to feel overwhelmed about like, oh my goodness, did I forget anything? You can just go through the checklist. And then the last one is for you to check out a webinar that actually we did a few weeks ago where we partnered with Legal Information Clinic about renting specifically in Montreal. And they spoke a lot about what the sort of legal caveats to renting in Montreal are right now. So a lot of information about what you might need to know if you're concerned about how COVID could affect your ability to rent safely and legally here in Montreal. So I'd highly recommend checking that out when you get the chance. The link to it was just posted in the chat box, or again, you can visit the mcgill.ca/first year website. So I will link it back to Kirsten.
All right, so coming close to a close here, I'm just gonna give you my top 3 tips. And fun fact, I am in the picture at the top in the orange. I'm in the front crouching down. Just thought it'd be cool to mention. But my first tip is that Google probably knows. So if you ever have a question about McGill and you're not really sure where to start to get the information, you should just type the top again, Google plus McGill, and there's probably information about it somewhere. And we also have a McGill subreddit, and there's like always so many posts on there about basically anything that you could imagine. So you could probably find the information there too. My second advice would be to get involved in something other than your schoolwork. So there's so many things to do on campus at McGill. There are so many people that have the same interests as you that like also want to meet other people. There's also lots of ways to get involved at McGill, and the SSMU will still be hosting an activities fair this year. It will just be online, but you'll still be able to learn about the different clubs and student groups that you might want to join. So be sure to keep your eye out for when online activities fair is coming up. And my third piece of advice is to explore Montreal. So I put a nice picture of all the snow in the bottom. Maybe I subconsciously want it to be a little bit cooler since Montreal is in a bit of a heat wave right now. But don't stay in the McGill bubble. Use your Opus card if you get one to visit a different neighborhood every weekend. Or given the current circumstances, there's also lots of ways to discover Montreal online. I know the Montreal Museum of Fine Arts has their collections online, and you could also explore the city through restaurants and order like food from different neighborhoods every week. And the parks and a lot of trails and kind of green spaces in Montreal are not closed. They're still opening, and a lot of stuff is slowly opening up over time too. So there'll still be lots of opportunities for you to explore Montreal. But that's about all I have for the presentation. So thank you for listening to us ramble on about all the general information we know about housing. We're gonna go into the question